I was defined by my own acceptance, my own power, and the love of a family that had finally found me. If you've ever had to walk away to find yourself, remember that silence can be the loudest revenge. Another step up, Jessica chirped, her blonde hair catching the low evening light. More responsibility. Higher pay. It's exactly where I want to be. My adoptive father, Thomas, nodded, a quiet affirmation of his daughter's success. He took a sip of his wine, his eyes briefly meeting mine before skittering away. That was typical. A quick acknowledgement, then back to the preferred view. I sat there, 28 years old, a silent observer in my own family's narrative. My job, running a small chain of independent bookstores, was always deemed quaint or sweet. Never successful. Never impressive. It was a stark contrast to Jessica's corporate climb. And Patricia made sure that contrast was always highlighted. Always felt. The conversation drifted to Jessica's plans for a new car. A sleek German model. Patricia's eyes sparkled. You deserve it, sweetie. She gushed. All your hard work paying off. She paused. Then her gaze, cold and sharp, finally landed on me. The air in the room thickened. I knew this look. It was the prelude to one of her pronouncements. A dismissal wrapped in a smile or a criticism disguised as concern. And Alara, Patricia began, her voice suddenly flat, devoid of the warmth she'd just showered on Jessica. Still with the books, dear. It wasn't a question. It was a judgment, a gentle push, a reminder of my perceived lack. I simply nodded. A small, almost imperceptible movement. I had learned that any response was fuel for her fire. Silence was my shield, my last defense. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her water. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sky, narrowed slightly. You know, she said, her voice dropping, becoming dangerously quiet. Sometimes I wonder why we even bother with these dinners. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Jessica looked down at her plate, a small knowing smirk playing on her lips. She understood the game. She was always on Patricia's team. Then she said it. The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed, colder than any winter wind. You're not my real daughter, Alara. My breath caught. It wasn't the first time I'd heard her imply it or even say it in anger. But this time it was different. There was no anger. Only a chilling, detached certainty. Her eyes were fixed on mine, daring me to react, to break. You never were, she added, her voice a low, steady hum. You're an outsider. And frankly, you've always been a disappointment. A part of me, a deep wounded part, wanted to scream, to cry, to demand why. After all these years, after all my attempts to earn a shred of her affection, she could be so cruel. But another part, a stronger, quieter part, simply felt a click, like a lock finally falling into place, a recognition of a truth I had always felt, but never heard so nakedly. The dry roast chicken suddenly seemed irrelevant. The expensive wine in Thomas's glass meaningless. Jessica's promotion, a distant whisper. Everything in that room, every carefully constructed illusion of family, shattered into a million pieces. But instead of feeling the shards cut me, I felt a strange lightness, a release. I pushed my chair back gently. The scrape on the floor was the loudest sound in the stunned silence. My movements were slow, deliberate. I reached for my bag, which I had placed beside my chair earlier. It was a simple leather tote holding my keys, my wallet, a small paperback I was reading, my essentials. I stood up. I didn't look at Patricia. I didn't look at Thomas or Jessica. I walked towards the front door. Each step was even, unhurried. The silence behind me was absolute. They were waiting for the outburst, the tears, the pleading. They had wanted to break me. They thought they had succeeded. I opened the door, a cool breeze washing over me. I stepped out into the twilight, the streetlights just beginning to glow. I closed the door quietly behind me. No slam, no dramatic exit, just a calm, final closure. As I walked to my car, the crisp autumn air filling my lungs, a whisper formed in my mind. Not a shout, not a cry. A steady, resolute thought. They thought they'd finally broken me, but they had no idea what was coming. My hands gripped the steering wheel, the cool leather familiar under my touch. The car started with a soft purr. I drove away from the house, away from the dry roast chicken and the cold pronouncements, away from the Bennetts. I didn't look back. There was nothing left there for me, only an empty space that now finally felt ready to be filled. The quiet exit from the Bennett house wasn't an act of sudden defiance. It was the culmination of a lifetime of small wounds, a mosaic of subtle cruelties that had built up piece by agonizing piece. For 28 years, I had learned early on that my presence was tolerated, never truly celebrated. I was the placeholder, the extra, the one who didn't quite belong. My earliest memories of family life are tainted with the feeling of being other. I remember sitting at the breakfast table, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Jessica, a year younger, was already a whirlwind of bright energy. She'd spill her juice, and Patricia would rush to clean it up, clucking with exaggerated concern. If I spilled mine, I'd get a sharp sigh, a roll of the eyes, and a stern command to clean it myself. Even then, the difference was clear. Jessica's mistakes were adorable. Mine were annoyances. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" That phrase, in various iterations, became the soundtrack to my childhood. Jessica was always the benchmark, the ideal. She was outgoing. I was quiet. She excelled in ballet. I preferred reading. She made friends easily. I kept to myself. Each difference was a failing on my part. A reason for Patricia to deliver another cutting comparison. Jessica got an A on her science project. What about yours? Elara? Oh, a B. Well, it's not an A. Is it? Look at Jessica. So popular. Always invited to parties. You should try to socialize more. Elara. It's not healthy to always be in your room with those books. My room became my sanctuary. A small space filled with stories where I could be anyone. Go anywhere. It was the only place I truly felt accepted within the pages of a novel. Patricia saw it as a problem. She's so reclusive. I'd hear her tell her friends on the phone, her voice dripping with a faux concern that felt more like judgment. Always off in her own world. My world was infinitely kinder than hers. Family dinners were a particularly refined form of torture. They were supposed to be a time of togetherness, but for me, they were performances. Jessica would regale them with stories from school. Her voice animated. Her gestures grand. Patricia and Thomas would listen, rapt, their faces alight with adoration. When it was my turn, if there ever was a turn, my contributions would be met with polite, often bored nods. If I spoke too much, I'd be cut off. If I said too little, I'd be accused of being sullen. It was a no-win situation. I remember one Christmas. I was 10. I had spent weeks making a detailed hand-sewn doll for Patricia, imagining her surprise and delight. Jessica had bought her a scarf from a department store. Patricia unwrapped Jessica's gift first, holding it up with a gasp of pleasure. Oh, Jessica, it's beautiful. You always know just what I like. Then she opened mine. She held the doll for a moment, her expression unreadable. Oh, how quaint. Elara, you really spent time on this, didn't you? She put it down on the table, then picked up Jessica's scarf again. The doll was forgotten, left among the wrapping paper. The scarf, however, was worn proudly that entire winter. I never made her another handmade gift. The message was clear. My efforts, my heart, my unique contributions were simply not enough. Thomas, my adoptive father, was never as overtly cruel as Patricia. His cruelty was one of omission, of quiet complicity. He rarely defended me. He rarely intervened. He would often just look away, his eyes holding a fleeting sadness that he quickly suppressed. His silence spoke volumes. It told me he knew what was happening, but he chose not to stop it. He chose his peace over my pain. This was, in many ways, a deeper cut. Patricia's cruelty was a storm. Thomas's was the slow, steady erosion of a shore. As I grew older, the comparisons didn't stop. They just matured. Jessica went to a prestigious university studying business. I chose a state college majoring in literature. Another point of contention. Jessica's going to be a CEO one day. Elara. What exactly are you going to do with a literature degree? Teach, Patricia would ask, her tone implying that teaching was a step above begging. I started working part-time jobs during college, saving every penny. I didn't want to be dependent on the Bennetts. Their money felt tainted. A price paid for my presence. I worked at a local bookstore, then a coffee shop, always keeping my head down, always planning. My goal was simple: independence. Financial independence meant emotional freedom. My 20s brought new layers to the golden child narrative. Jessica got engaged to a well-off man, had a lavish wedding, and bought a beautiful house. Each milestone was celebrated with fanfare, social media posts, and endless bragging from Patricia. My life, by contrast, was quiet. I was building my small chain of bookstores carefully, deliberately out of sight. I didn't announce my successes to them. I knew they wouldn't care. Or worse, they'd find a way to diminish them. I learned to endure. I developed a thick skin, a quiet resilience. I learned to smile politely when Patricia made a passive-aggressive comment. I learned to nod when Thomas avoided my gaze. I learned to let Jessica's boasting wash over me. But beneath the calm exterior, I was always planning, always saving, always preparing for the day I could walk away for good. Not just from a dinner table, but from their entire suffocating orbit. The evening of the dry roast chicken was just another Sunday dinner until it wasn't. Patricia's words, "You're not my real daughter. You never were," didn't break me. They released me. They severed the last invisible thread that had held me, however tenuously. To their family, it was a confirmation of everything I had always felt. A brutal honesty that paradoxically set me free. As I drove away from their house, the silence in my car was no longer oppressive. It was expansive. It was the sound of a prison door opening. The years of subtle cruelty. The quiet judgments. The constant comparisons. They had forged something in me. Not bitterness. Not hatred. But a steely resolve and a deep, abiding hunger for something real. Something true. I didn't know it then. But the truth was already waiting for me. And it would change everything. 6 months before that final dinner, my life was still a carefully constructed facade. I was still Alara Bennett, the quiet bookstore owner, the less impressive daughter. But beneath the surface, a slow seismic shift was already underway, triggered by a dusty tin box and a father who finally, unwittingly, handed me the key to my past. It was a Saturday morning, bright and unusually warm for early spring. Thomas had called, a rare occurrence. He needed help clearing out the attic. Patricia was out with Jessica, shopping for something extravagant. No doubt it was just him and me alone in the creaky old house. A situation that usually led to awkward silences and averted gazes. The attic was a labyrinth of forgotten memories. Old furniture draped in white sheets. Boxes of outgrown clothes. Faded photo albums. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight piercing the grimy window. Thomas was methodical, meticulously sorting through old tax documents. I was tasked with clearing a corner piled high with what looked like old college textbooks and various family keepsakes. I found it tucked away behind a stack of yearbooks, a small rectangular tin box. It wasn't fancy, just plain dark green with a rusted latch. It looked old, significant. My curiosity was piqued. I picked it up. It felt heavier than its size suggested, as if holding more than just paper. I tried the latch. It was locked. "Dad," I called out, holding up the box. "What's in this?" Thomas turned, his glasses perched on the end of his nose. He squinted at the box. His expression, usually so placid, suddenly flickered. A flash of unease quickly masked. "Oh, that old thing. Probably just some old papers. Forget about it. Alara, just leave it." His reaction was immediate. Too quick. It made me suspicious. Thomas rarely cared about anything in the attic. His dismissal felt forced. "It's locked," I said, my voice deliberately neutral. "Do you have the key?" He hesitated. "No. I don't think so. Probably lost years ago. Just put it back." But I couldn't. His obvious discomfort, the way his eyes avoided mine. It was a signal, a silent alarm bell ringing in my mind. I nodded, pretending to comply. I placed the box back where I found it, but not before subtly noting its exact location. Later that day, after Thomas had gone to bed and the house was quiet, I crept back into the attic. I had a small toolkit I kept in my car just for odd jobs. It contained a set of tiny screwdrivers and picks. I knew it wasn't right to snoop, but an instinct, deep and powerful, told me this box held something important, something they had kept from me. It took me a tense 10 minutes. The lock was old and brittle. With a soft click, it sprang open. My heart hammered in my chest. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled beneath a yellowed lace doily, were papers. Not old tax documents. Not college notes. These were official. My adoptive name, Alara Bennett, jumped out at me from the top of a document. It was an adoption certificate. My adoption certificate. I pulled it out, my hands trembling slightly. I'd been told a simple story all my life. My birth parents were young, unable to care for a child, and had placed me with a reputable agency. The Bennetts, a kind, loving couple, had adopted me through that agency. A straightforward narrative, neatly packaged. But this document was different. It listed an agency. Yes, but there was an amendment, a special clause, and a name. A name I had never heard before, Victoria Sterling. Next to her name was a date, my birth date, and a note. Almost an afterthought, referring to private arrangement and compensation for care. Compensation for care. The words chilled me. My adoptive parents hadn't just adopted me through an agency. They had been paid. Paid to take me. Paid to keep me hidden. My gaze dropped further down the page to a small, almost invisible seal, Sterling Industries. The name clicked. Sterling Industries was a massive tech empire, a powerhouse in American business. Everyone knew the name. Everyone knew the CEO. Victoria Sterling, a formidable, fiercely private woman who rarely appeared in public. A titan of industry, known for her intelligence and relentless drive. The pieces started to fit together, forming a picture far more complex and painful than any simple adoption story. I wasn't just adopted. I was placed deliberately, and for a reason. The Bennetts weren't just kind, loving parents. They were caretakers paid to keep a secret. And that secret was me. I spent the rest of the night devouring every document in that box. There were letters carefully coded, hinting at legal agreements, monthly payments, and strict confidentiality clauses. There was even a faded photograph. A young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, holding a swaddled baby. Her eyes, even in the grainy photo, were a striking shade of green. My eyes. The pain of the betrayal was immense. It wasn't just Patricia's cruelty. It was the deliberate deception of both Thomas and Patricia. They had looked me in the eye for 28 years, knowing this truth, knowing they had taken me under false pretenses, knowing I was a commodity, not a cherished child. My entire understanding of my life, my family, my place in the world crumbled around me. But alongside the pain, a new emotion stirred. A powerful, unyielding curiosity. Who was Victoria Sterling? Why had she given me up? What did "to protect the family's reputation" truly mean? And why had she never searched for me, if everything they built was for me? The documents hinted at a story far grander and far more tragic than I could have ever imagined. I carefully replaced the documents in the tin box, locked it again, and put it back exactly as I found it. No one would ever know I had been there. But I was changed. The Alara Bennett who had entered that attic was gone. In her place was a woman with a burning secret, a woman driven by a need to uncover the full truth. My truth. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the name Victoria Sterling echoing in my mind. Sterling Industries, a powerful American tech empire. And I, Alara Bennett, the quiet bookstore owner, was inexplicably linked to its very heart. They thought they had kept me hidden. They thought I was a secret. But secrets, like old boxes in attics, always had a way of being found. And mine, once discovered, would not stay hidden for long. The immediate aftermath of discovering the truth was a blur of raw emotion: betrayal, anger, a deep ache of loneliness for the life I could have had. But underneath it all, a quiet determination began to solidify. I had to find her. Victoria Sterling, the woman in the faded photograph, the woman with my eyes. I knew I couldn't just call her office. A CEO of Sterling Industries would have layers of gatekeepers. My adoptive parents had gone to great lengths to keep me a secret. I needed to approach this with the same discretion, perhaps more. I needed help. Professional help. I quietly hired a private investigator. I chose one known for their discretion and ability to navigate corporate labyrinths. I presented him with the documents, the name, and the photograph. I need to contact her, I explained, keeping my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. But I need it to be private. No media. No drama. Just a direct line. It took a few weeks. Every day was an agonizing wait. I went through the motions at my bookstores, managing inventory, training staff. But my mind was miles away, consumed by the potential meeting. What would she be like? Would she regret giving me up? Would she even want to see me? Then the call came from the investigator. "She's agreed to meet," he said, his voice flat and professional. "She wants to see you tomorrow at a private location. Her security will be in touch with the details." The details arrived by encrypted email. A quiet restaurant in a secluded part of downtown Manhattan. A private dining room. A specific time. No fanfare. No media. Just us. I remember getting dressed that morning. I chose a simple, elegant dark blue dress. Professional. Understated. I wanted to look capable. Not desperate. My hands were clammy, my heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't just meeting a stranger. This was meeting my origin. When I arrived at the restaurant, a stern-faced man in a suit escorted me to the private room. He opened the door, and there she was, Victoria Sterling. She was sitting at a large round table, bathed in the soft glow of a hidden lamp. Her posture was impeccable, her silver hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. She wore a tailored suit, powerful yet elegant. And then I saw her eyes, the same striking shade of green as mine. A piercing, intelligent gaze that held a lifetime of unspoken stories. The resemblance was unmistakable. It was like looking at an older, more refined version of myself. A profound sense of recognition washed over me, a feeling I had never experienced with the Bennetts. This was family. Real family. She stood as I entered, her movements graceful. "Alara," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, yet imbued with authority. There was a tremor in it that I almost missed. "Thank you for coming." "Margaret." "Victoria," I replied, correcting myself, my voice a little hoarse. We sat down. There was no small talk, no awkward pleasantries, just a palpable silence filled with decades of longing and unspoken questions. "I imagine you have many questions," she began, her gaze unwavering. "And I owe you answers. All of them." She explained everything. She was young, barely out of college when she became pregnant. Her family, old money and highly conservative, had been on the verge of making a crucial business deal that would solidify their position in the industry. A scandal, an illegitimate child, would have destroyed everything. Her parents gave her an ultimatum: Give up the baby or be disowned. Cut off from everything she had worked for and everything her family had built. It was the hardest decision of my life. Alara, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. Her eyes, my eyes, welled up. But no tears fell. I was told it was for the best. For your future. That you would be with a good family. I never stopped thinking about you. Not a single day. She went on to explain how she had tried to find me over the years. How the adoption agency had been notoriously secretive. How the Bennetts had been paid to ensure absolute confidentiality. How they had moved states once to throw her off the trail. But she never gave up. She employed investigators for decades. Always hoping. Always searching. I've searched for you for 25 years, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Every success. Every company I built. Every deal I closed. I built it for you. I swore I would make sure you would never want for anything. That you would have the life I couldn't give you. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm. Warm. It was the first time a mother had truly held my hand with such genuine affection. Sterling Industries. Alara. It's all for you. Everything I've amassed. Every opportunity. It's yours if you want it. I looked at her. This powerful woman, my mother, who had carried a secret and a longing for me for so long. The Bennetts had given me a life of subtle cruelty and neglect. Victoria Sterling, my real mother, was offering me a legacy, a future, and a chance at belonging. I want it, I said. The words coming from a place deep within me. A place that had yearned for acceptance and purpose for so long. I want to know everything. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. She squeezed my hand again. Then we begin tomorrow. Welcome home, my daughter. That night, for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly claimed. The emptiness the Bennetts had carved out of my heart began to fill, not with resentment or anger, but with a surprising sense of peace and a thrilling anticipation of what was to come. I wasn't just Alara Bennett anymore. I was Alara Sterling. And my real life was just beginning. The world shifted on its axis the moment I met Victoria. The quiet, understated life I had lived for 28 years began to morph into something entirely different. Something purposeful and powerful. Victoria wasted no time. Her approach was direct, efficient, and deeply loving. She wasn't just a CEO. She was a mentor, a teacher, and finally, a mother. Our days became a whirlwind of intense learning. Victoria didn't want me to just inherit Sterling Industries. She wanted me to understand it, master it, lead it. She enrolled me in private, accelerated business strategy courses with some of the best minds in the country. These weren't online classes or generic seminars. These were bespoke sessions tailored specifically for me, designed to fast-track my understanding of complex corporate structures, financial markets, and global logistics. I absorbed everything like a sponge. My years of quiet observation at the Bennett table, my innate knack for understanding people, and my meticulous approach to building my own small bookstore chain served as an unexpected foundation. I might have been underestimated by the Bennetts, but I was not unobservant. I had always had a sharp mind, honed by books and a need to plan my own escape. Now that mind was finally given the fuel it craved. Victoria introduced me to key department heads at Sterling Industries, but always under the guise of an external consultant or a special project manager. I spent weeks immersed in different divisions, R&D, marketing, finance, human resources. I learned about our innovative tech products, understood the intricacies of our supply chain, and delved into the strategic partnerships that formed the backbone of the company. Leadership isn't about knowing everything. Elara. Victoria told me one evening, as we reviewed a complex acquisition proposal in her sleek Manhattan penthouse. The city lights glittered outside, a stark contrast to the quiet suburban streets of my past. It's about knowing who knows everything and how to empower them. It's about vision, integrity, and decisive action. She taught me how to read people, how to command a room with presence rather than volume, how to negotiate with confidence. We practiced hypothetical scenarios, debating business strategies, analyzing market trends, and even role-playing difficult conversations. She pushed me, challenged me, but always with an undercurrent of unwavering belief. For the first time, someone saw my potential and actively nurtured it. During this intense period, I maintained my life as Elara Bennett. I still went to my bookstores, still managed my staff, still pretended my chain was just my little passion project. The Bennetts, completely oblivious, occasionally called, usually for some trivial request or to subtly brag about Jessica again. I would answer, polite and distant, never letting on the monumental changes happening in my life. It was a bizarre double life, one that required an iron will and a masterful poker face. My small chain of bookstores, which the Bennetts deemed insignificant, was in fact thriving. I had used my personal savings, smart investments, and a keen eye for niche markets to build a profitable enterprise. It wasn't Sterling Industries, but it was mine, and I was proud of it. Keeping it a secret from the Bennetts was a deliberate choice. It was my private victory, something they could never diminish or claim credit for. I learned that Victoria had continued to monitor my well-being, even without direct contact. She knew about my bookstores, about my quiet successes. It wasn't just a matter of finding an heir. It was about connecting with a daughter she already knew was capable and intelligent. This knowledge filled me with a quiet warmth, a sense of being truly known and valued. As the weeks turned into months, my transformation was profound. I shed the timid, self-effacing girl the Bennetts had tried to shape. In her place emerged a woman who understood her own worth, her own strength. I learned to trust my instincts, to voice my opinions, to stand firm in my convictions. I was no longer a victim enduring silent cruelty. I was a rising force, meticulously preparing for my moment. Victoria's plan was meticulous. She would announce her retirement and then dramatically reveal me as her long-lost daughter and successor. It would shake the business world. But more importantly, it would send an unmistakable message to the Bennetts. My public debut as Alara Sterling would not just be a career announcement. It would be a declaration of identity, a reclamation of my rightful place. I often thought about that dry roast chicken dinner, about Patricia's cold eyes and cutting words. They had intended to break me, but they had simply provided the final push. They had kicked out Alara Bennett, the girl they thought they knew. They had no idea they were about to face Alara Sterling, the woman they had deliberately hidden, now ready to step into the light. The day of the final dinner, the one where Patricia uttered those shattering words, "You're not my real daughter. You never were. I already knew my future. I already knew my mother. I already knew my power." Their words were just a cue, a signal for me to finally walk away. Not in defeat, but in quiet, calculated triumph. The preparation was complete. The stage was set, and I was ready to play my part. We returned to that Sunday dinner. The air in the room was thick with unspoken resentments. The scent of overcooked chicken, a bland backdrop to the simmering tension. I sat there, a silent observer. But this time, it was different. 6 months of quiet preparation with Victoria had changed me. I was no longer a victim waiting for the next blow. I was an actress playing her final scene in a tired, predictable play. Jessica was, as always, the star of the show. She talked about a recent vacation, her voice a little too loud, her laughter a little too bright. Patricia hung on her every word, her face a mask of maternal pride. Thomas ate his food methodically, his gaze fixed on his plate. A man who had long ago chosen willful ignorance as his preferred state of being. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching them through a pane of thick glass. I saw them not as family, but as characters whose motivations I now understood with perfect eyes. Chilling clarity. They weren't just a dysfunctional family. They were my paid keepers, the guardians of a secret they had profited from. Every smile Patricia gave Jessica was a performance. Every compliment was a transaction. And every criticism directed at me was a reinforcement of the role I was meant to play, the grateful, lesser outsider. Patricia, feeling my silence was a sign of sullenness, turned her attention to me. The shift was palpable. The warmth in her voice vanished, replaced by a familiar, condescending tone. "Alara? You're so quiet tonight," she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "Is everything all right at that little bookstore of yours?" My little bookstore. The phrase was designed to diminish, to infantilize. My little bookstore was a profitable, multi-location business I had built from the ground up, with nothing but my own savings and relentless hard work. It was a testament to my business acumen, a fact I had kept carefully hidden. To them, it was just a hobby, a quaint little pastime for the daughter who couldn't achieve anything real. I met her gaze, my expression calm. "Everything is fine. Patricia, business is good." My simple, direct response seemed to annoy her. She wanted a reaction. She thrived on emotional turmoil. "Good," she repeated, a slight sneer in her voice. "That's nice. Dear, Jessica's company just landed a massive new client. They're expanding into Europe, but I'm sure selling a few paperbacks is fulfilling in its own way." Jessica shot me a look of pity, a look she had perfected over the years. It was a look that said, "I'm so sorry you're not me." Thomas cleared his throat, a low rumble of discomfort. He knew this was cruel. But as always, he did nothing. I simply nodded. I'm happy for Jessica. My refusal to engage, my unshakable calm, was like a match to a fuse. Patricia's composure cracked. She had spent years trying to get under my skin, to make me feel small, to break my spirit. My serenity was an act of defiance she could not tolerate. She put her fork down with a sharp clink. Her face hardened, the polite facade falling away to reveal the raw ugliness beneath. "You know, I don't understand you, Elara," she began, her voice low and venomous. "We gave you everything. A good home. A good education. We took you in when no one else wanted you. And this is the thanks we get? This silence. This judgment." I didn't say a word. I just watched her. My silence was a mirror, and she did not like the reflection she saw. "We tried," she continued, her voice rising. "God knows we tried to make you one of us. But you were always different, always distant, always a reminder of the mistake we made." Thomas finally looked up. "Patricia, that's enough." "No, Thomas, it's not enough," she snapped, turning on him. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of this charade." She turned back to me, her eyes blazing with a cold fire. "Adopting you was a mistake." There it was, the final unvarnished truth of her heart. The words she had always wanted to say. The sentiment that had poisoned every interaction we'd ever had. It was meant to be the final blow. The one that would finally shatter me. But it didn't. Instead, I felt a profound sense of release. The play was over. The last line had been spoken. Slowly, I folded my napkin and placed it on the table. I stood up, my movements fluid and unhurried. "Thank you for dinner," I said, my voice even and clear. It was the polite thing to say, a final hollow echo of the life I was leaving behind. Their faces were a study in shock. Patricia's mouth was slightly agape. Jessica looked confused. Thomas just stared, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and regret. They had expected tears, shouting, a dramatic scene. They had not expected this quiet, dignified exit. My calm was terrifying to them because it was something they could not control. I picked up my bag and walked to the door. I didn't run. I didn't storm out. I simply left. I closed the door behind me. The soft click of the latch, a final, definitive sound. Outside. The night air was cool and clean. I got into my car. The familiar scent of old books and leather a comforting presence. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, not looking back at the house. At the family that never was. As I drove, the city lights blurring past my window, I allowed myself a single, quiet whisper. A mantra for my new beginning. Goodbye to the Bennetts. Hello to the Sterlings. The road ahead was bright. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally driving toward home. The week following that final dinner was a blur of calculated action. The moment I left the Bennett house, I called Victoria. "It's done," I said, my voice steady. "I'm on my way." Her reply was simple and immediate. "My driver is 5 minutes from your apartment. He'll bring you here. Your new life starts tonight." I didn't go back to my small, quiet apartment. There was nothing there for me but memories of a life I had outgrown. The driver, a discreet man named James, met me and took my car keys. Victoria's team would handle the logistics, clearing out my old life, moving my personal belongings. I walked away from everything associated with Elara Bennett, with only the tote bag on my shoulder. Stepping into Victoria's Manhattan penthouse was like stepping into another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the city skyline, a glittering tapestry of light and ambition. The space was modern, elegant, and infused with a sense of quiet power. It felt less like a home and more like a command center. And for the first time, it felt like my home. "Welcome," Victoria said, greeting me at the door with a warm embrace. It was an embrace that held 28 years of missed birthdays, holidays, and quiet moments. It was an embrace that anchored me. The next few days were intense. Victoria and I, along with her team of lawyers and PR strategists, finalized the succession plan. We went over every detail, every press release, every potential question from the media. My training had prepared me for the business side of things, but this was about crafting a narrative. My narrative. The story of the long-lost daughter, found and ready to take her rightful place. I spent hours with Victoria's personal stylist and communications coach. It wasn't about changing who I was, but about presenting the person I had become with unshakable confidence. The simple, understated clothes I used to wear were replaced with a wardrobe of tailored suits, elegant dresses, and powerful silhouettes. It felt like putting on armor, an external reflection of the internal strength I had discovered. 1 week after I walked out of the Bennett house, the plan was executed. It started with a press release issued at 9 a.m. on a Monday. It was sent to every major financial news outlet in the world. By 9/5, the business world exploded. For immediate release, Sterling Industries announces CEO succession. Victoria Sterling to retire. Names successor. The initial buzz was predictable. Speculation ran wild about who would take over the tech empire. But then the second wave of information hit. A carefully orchestrated follow-up. Forbes, the sterling legacy continues. Long-lost daughter, Alara Sterling, takes the helm of tech giant. The Wall Street Journal, in shocking reveal. Sterling Industries names unknown heiress as new CEO. Bloomberg, who is Alara Sterling? The mystery woman set to inherit a multi-billion-dollar empire. My face was suddenly everywhere. A professional, powerful headshot that Victoria's team had taken was plastered across news sites and television screens. The woman in the photo looked confident, poised, and in control. She looked nothing like the quiet, overlooked girl who used to sit at the Bennett's dinner table. The story was irresistible, a tale of secret adoption, a mother's tireless search, and a dramatic fairy tale-like reunion. Our PR team had framed it perfectly, emphasizing Victoria's journey and my quiet, independent success with my bookstore chain, now revealed to be a surprisingly profitable enterprise. It painted me as a worthy successor, not just an heir. As the news cycle went into overdrive, I sat with Victoria in her office, watching the story unfold on a bank of television screens. "Are you ready?" she asked, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "I am," I said, my voice clear and strong. My phone, a new number that only a select few had, remained silent. But I could imagine the chaos erupting in the Bennett household. I pictured Patricia scrolling through her phone, her morning coffee forgotten. I saw her face pale, her eyes widen in disbelief as she saw my picture. My new name. I imagined her frantic calls to Thomas, his shocked silence as the truth of who I was and what they had lost crashed down upon them. Their friends, their neighbors, the entire social circle they had so carefully cultivated would be calling. Their phones would be lighting up with a firestorm of questions, gossip, and thinly veiled accusations. "You knew you raised a Sterling? Why did you never tell us?" The leverage they thought they had over me, the secret they had been paid to keep, was now public knowledge. But the narrative was no longer theirs to control. It was mine. Their quiet suburban life was about to be turned upside down. The daughter they had dismissed as a disappointment was now one of the most powerful women in the country. Their panic was the first echo of a reckoning that was long overdue. And it was just the beginning. The call came 2 days after the announcement. It was from my new personal assistant, a sharp, efficient woman named Sophie. "Ms. Sterling," she said, her voice calm and professional. "A Mr. and Mrs. Bennett are in the lobby. They are insistent on seeing you." A cold, quiet calm settled over me. "Thank you, Sophie. Send them up." I stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window of my new office. It was a corner office on the top floor of Sterling Tower, a sleek glass monolith that pierced the Manhattan skyline. The view was panoramic, a dizzying vista of power and possibility. This office was more than just a workspace. It was a throne, and it was from here that I would finally face my past. The doors opened, and they were ushered in. Patricia, Thomas, and Jessica. They looked small and out of place amidst the polished chrome and minimalist art. Patricia wore an expensive but ill-fitting suit, a desperate attempt to look like she belonged. Thomas's face was ashen, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Jessica hovered behind them, her eyes wide, looking at me as if she'd never seen me before. They stopped in the middle of the vast office, looking around in stunned silence. Their suburban world of dry roast chicken and quiet judgment was a million miles away from this place. Alara, Patricia began, her voice trembling slightly. She took a step forward, her hands outstretched in a gesture of supplication. We had no idea. We are so sorry. I didn't move from my position by the window. I let her words hang in the air, hollow and meaningless. Sorry. They were sorry they had been caught. They were sorry they had underestimated me. They were not sorry for the years of cruelty, for the calculated emotional neglect. Sorry for what exactly? Patricia, I asked, my voice even, devoid of the emotion she was expecting. Her face faltered. For everything. The way we treated you. We should have been better. We should have loved you more. We always thought of you as our daughter. A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. I turned to face them fully, my expression unreadable. You thought of me as a monthly payment, I said, my voice cutting through the air like glass. A secret you were paid to keep. A retirement plan. Thomas flinched as if struck. Jessica gasped. Patricia's face crumpled. No, she whispered. It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? I walked slowly towards my desk, a massive slab of polished obsidian. I didn't sit. I stood behind it, placing my hands flat on its cool surface. You took money to raise me, and in return, you ensured I never knew who I was. You hid me. You diminished me. You did everything in your power to make sure I would never be a threat. Never be anything more than the quiet, unassuming girl who should be grateful for the scraps you threw her way. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Your mistake wasn't in how you treated me. Your mistake was in believing your own narrative. You thought I was weak. Patricia began to cry. Fat, theatrical tears. We can fix this. Alara, we're still your family. We love you. I looked at her, at the woman who had caused me so much pain, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, hard finality. No? Patricia, you don't get to use that word. You don't know what it means. I met her gaze, my eyes as unyielding as stone. You didn't lose a daughter. You lost your leverage. The words hit her harder than any physical blow. The crying stopped. Her face went slack with shock. Thomas looked down at the floor. The truth of my statement undeniable. I reached for a slim, leather-bound folder that was sitting on my desk. I pushed it across the polished surface towards them. "This is why you're really here," I said. "Not for an apology. For this?" Thomas, his hand shaking, picked it up and opened it. His face went from pale to ghostly white as he read the first page. Jessica peered over his shoulder. Her own expression, a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. "What is this?" Patricia demanded, her voice shrill. "It's a preliminary acquisition offer," I explained, my voice calm and businesslike. "Sterling Industries is acquiring Bennett & Sons. Your family's small manufacturing business. The one you were so proud of. The one Thomas inherited from his father. The one that has been struggling for the last 5 years." Thomas looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Alara, you can't." "I can," I replied. "Our legal team has found numerous financial irregularities. The company is over-leveraged and on the brink of bankruptcy. This offer is, frankly, generous. It's the only thing that will save it. And by extension, your comfortable lifestyle." I leaned forward slightly, my gaze locking onto theirs. "There is, of course, a condition. The current management will be restructured. You will have a choice. You can stay on as employees. Under my authority, you will answer to a board I appoint, or you can walk away with nothing." Silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the city far below. They were trapped. Their legacy, their pride, their financial security, all of it was now in my hands. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had been completely and irrevocably reversed. They had come seeking a handout, hoping for a piece of my newfound fortune. Instead, they were facing the consequences of a lifetime of their own actions. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. For a long moment, no one moved. Thomas stared at the documents in his hands as if they were a death sentence. Patricia's face was a mask of disbelief, her mind refusing to process the reality of her situation. She looked from the folder to me and back again, searching for a sign that this was some cruel joke. She found none. Finally, Thomas's shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him completely. He looked at Patricia, a helpless, broken expression on his face. It was a silent exchange, but it spoke volumes. It spoke of years of financial mismanagement, of pride masking failure, of the quiet desperation that had been lurking beneath their comfortable suburban facade. Their family business, their legacy, was a house of cards, and I had just blown it down. He walked to the desk, took a pen from his pocket, and flipped to the last page of the agreement. His hand trembled as he signed his name on the line. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. Patricia watched him, a strangled sob escaping her lips. "Thomas, no," she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. She knew, just as he did, that they had no other choice. She followed him to the desk, her movements stiff, and added her own spidery signature beneath his. The quiet scratch of pen on paper was the sound of their surrender. Just as she lifted the pen, the office doors opened silently. Victoria entered. She moved with an elegance and authority that commanded the room. She was wearing a deep emerald green suit, a color that mirrored her eyes, my eyes. She didn't look at the Bennetts. Her focus was entirely on me. A small, proud smile gracing her lips. She walked to my side, placing a hand on my shoulder. Then she turned her cool, appraising gaze upon Patricia and Thomas. "For 28 years I searched for my daughter," Victoria said, her voice soft but carrying the weight of steel. "And for 28 years you kept her from me. You took her from me for money." She paused, letting her words sink in. A final damning judgment. "Now," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "she takes your company for justice." Patricia flinched, physically recoiling from the truth. Thomas simply closed his eyes. There was nothing left to say. They had lost completely. Sophie, my assistant, appeared at the door to escort them out. As they turned to leave, defeated and diminished, Patricia paused. She looked back at me, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a strange, dawning clarity. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, painful recognition. "You were always better than we realized," she whispered, the words barely audible. It was a confession, an admission of a truth she had spent a lifetime trying to deny. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a statement of fact, a final acknowledgement of my worth, offered far too late. I looked at her, at the woman whose approval I had once craved so desperately, and I felt a quiet, profound peace settle over me. I didn't need her validation anymore. I had my own. I simply replied, "I know." The doors closed behind them, leaving me and Victoria alone in the silent, sun-drenched office. The battle was over. The past had been confronted, and a form of justice had been served. It wasn't about revenge, not in the way Patricia would understand it. It was about balance. It was about reclaiming the power that had been denied to me for so long. It was about closing a chapter, finally and forever. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel and share the video to help me develop better. 2 weeks passed. The city hummed on. The business world moved to its next story, and my new life began to feel real. The transition was seamless. My work at Sterling Industries was challenging and fulfilling. I spent my evenings with Victoria, not as a CEO and her successor, but as a mother and daughter, making up for lost time. We'd cook dinner together, share stories, and simply enjoy the quiet comfort of each other's presence. The gaping hole in my heart, the one carved out by the Bennetts, was healing, filling with a sense of belonging I had never known. One afternoon, a letter arrived for me, delivered by a messenger. The envelope was simple, cream-colored, with my name, Elara Sterling, written in a familiar looping script. It was from Jessica. I took it to the window overlooking Central Park and opened it. The letter was short, handwritten on a single sheet of paper. Elara. I don't know what to say or how to say it. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. I spent my whole life thinking I was the lucky one, the better one. Mom and Dad always made it seem that way. But I see it now. You were the one who was strong. You were the one who was kind, even when we gave you no reason to be. I'm so sorry for everything. For every comparison, every time I let Mom say those things, every time I stood by and did nothing. I was a coward. I was jealous, though I never would have admitted it. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to start over if you'll let me. I'd like to get to know my sister for real this time. Jessica. I read the letter twice. There were no excuses. No justifications. Just a simple raw apology. It was more than I had ever received from Patricia or Thomas. I walked over to a bookshelf in my office. On it, I had placed a few personal items. One was a small framed photo from my childhood. One of the few that existed. It was of me and Jessica sitting on a swing set. I was about 7. She was 6. We were both smiling, our arms around each other. 2 little girls who hadn't yet been fully poisoned by their parents' favoritism. I took the letter and tucked it behind the frame. I didn't know if I was ready to start over with Jessica, but I was willing to consider it. Forgiveness, I was learning, was a quiet, personal process. Next to the old photo, I placed a new one. It was a picture taken at the press conference where I was announced as CEO. I was standing at a podium and Victoria was beside me, her hand on my arm, her face beaming with pride. In that photo, I looked strong, confident, and happy. Truly happy. Looking at the 2 pictures side by side, the past and the present, I felt a sense of completion. The little girl on the swing set had finally found her way home. The journey had been painful, filled with loneliness and quiet suffering. But it had also forged me, strengthened me, and led me to where I was now. Sometimes the family that breaks you is the one that builds your strength. Patricia and Thomas had, in their own cruel way, prepared me for this life. Their neglect taught me independence. Their criticism taught me resilience. Their lies taught me to seek the truth. They had inadvertently given me the tools I needed to not only survive, but to thrive. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply peace. It wasn't the acquisition of their company or the look on their faces that brought me true satisfaction. It was this quiet moment in my own office with my mother down the hall and a future of my own making stretching out before me. It was the knowledge that I had won, not by destroying them, but by building myself. I was no longer defined by their rejection. I was defined by my own acceptance, my own power, and the love of a family that had finally found me. If you've ever had to walk away to find yourself, remember